video, I'm going to be showing you a chess game that was played by Nihal Sarin versus E. Jensen. Nihal Sarin, who is playing from the white pieces, opens the game with the move pawn to d4, the queen's pawn game, knight to f6 and bishop to f4. The London system is on the board. Black plays pawn to d5. He immediately gains the e4 center, pawn to e3 and pawn to e6. Knight to d2. So nothing special. White is just developing the pieces and bishop to e7. c3. So white is simply strengthening this d4 pawn center and pawn to c5. Black immediately strikes in the center. Bishop to d3, developing the bishop and now castles. Knight gf3 and here pawn to b6. So black is ready to develop the bishop to b7 and knight to e5 was played. So what is the idea behind knight to e5? White has gained a rock solid knight on e5 and it is kind of difficult to dislodge this knight from a beautiful central square. And the idea is if you play knight d7, you immediately go after the knight. Then the idea is knight c6, queen to e8, and after knight captures e7, queen captures e7, black has lost the bishop pair so early in the game. And this is not a very good idea, especially in the London system, because the e7 bishop would do good defense to the g8 king. So you shouldn't give up the bishop so early. Black decides to go for the move bishop to b7 and he is threatening knight d7 and then he will exchange the knight. Queen to f3, so white is simply developing the queen and as planned black plays knight b d7. Rook to d1 and white is saying yes you can capture my knight. After knight captures c5 and d captures c5, yes I have doubled the pawns but after knight to e8, queen to h3 I get a solid attack. g6, bishop to h6 simply loses the rook on f8. So this is not a very good idea capturing this e5 pawn. So after rook to d1 was played, rook to c8. This is a very natural response because white is attacking on this king side and black should do the same on the queen side. He will play c4, b5 and b4 very soon. Queen to h3 as planned. Now white is actually threatening g4 and g5, rook to e8. And this is not a very good move. This rook should be stayed on f8 to defend this f7 pawn, but after rook to e8, this f7 pawn becomes weak and so does this e6 pawn. Nihal Sarin has a very devious idea in his mind and he plays the move knight gf3. And at first glance, this move seems like a completely harmless one. Why? Well, we are simply developing the knight and we are giving more defense to the e5 knight, so we are simply going to attack. But E. Jensen overlooked one move and he played the move pawn to g6. So pause the video for a few minutes and try to come up with the correct, accurate response for white. So after g6, you can notice that this f7 pawn and this e6 pawn are very weak. Nihal Sarin simply grabs the pawn on f7 and it was in this position that Nihal Sarin's opponent E. Jensen simply resigned the game as there is nothing to do. So after knight captures f7, we are attacking the queen and this queen has a lot of defensive pieces like this knight, this two knights, two rooks and one bishop, but none of them are really there to save the queen on d8. So after knight captures f7, you cannot play queen to c7 because of bishop captures c7. So let's say king captures f7, knight to g5, you give a check to the black king and now this is the idea. If you play king to f8, then you can go knight captures c6 check and win the queen on d8, but this would unnecessarily prolong the game for black. Instead, you have a forced checkmate sequence and you can simply play the move queen to h6, king to g8 and bishop to g6. So you're simply giving up the bishop and after bishop captures g6, white is simply exerting a lot of pressure. It is not possible to defend the position. So black will play h captures g6 and after queen captures g6, king to f8 loses to knight captures e6 checkmate and king to h8 loses to knight to f7 checkmate. So after this king captures f7 and knight to g5 check, it is not a good idea for black to play king to f8. What happens after king to g8? Well, now you simply play queen captures e6 check and let's say king to g7, queen to f7 check, king to h8 and after knight to e6 you're attacking this queen on d8. So let's say knight to e5, you counter attack. So if you play knight captures d8, then you play knight captures f7. So after knight to e5, you don't pay attention to this knight or this queen. You simply deliver checkmate with queen to g7. So let's go back. The only way for black to actually continue the game is king to g7. But even after here, white simply plays knight captures c6. He grabs a pawn, he gives a check, and is attacking this queen on d8. So after king to f7, knight captures d8 and rook captures d8 simply wins the game neatly for white. After knight captures f7, Jensson simply saw all these continuations and he resigned the game because he had no interest in continuing the game with the queen down. Thank you for watching the video till the end, friends. I will be visiting you with more chess videos on opening chess traps, puzzles, in-game strategies, middle game strategies very soon. So subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of my future content. Thank you and have a great day, friends. Of course,